Hello everyone, it's Marie and welcome to, I think this is my second live stream that I've ever done on my YouTube channel, Dream in Autumn. And I'm here today with, actually I'm not sure if it's live. I think it's live now, one moment.
Hang on, I'm going to check on YouTube. Yeah, you're on YouTube. Yeah, well, I think so, yeah. Like I can see you.
Perfect.
On YouTube, yeah.
Awesome. That was such a good intro as well. Yeah, but so hello everyone, my name's Marie. Welcome to my second ever live stream here on YouTube today I'm with Danica Christin. She's another travel vlogger. So Danica, would you just like to introduce yourself first and just tell us a little bit about your channel and then we'll get to the interview.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Danica Christin. I've got a YouTube channel as well. It's all about traveling, expert life. I've traveled now basically non-stop for about 10 years, working in different countries. I'm a humanitarian aid worker by profession, so that's kind of what I do for a living.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, so that's why I was so excited to interview you, Danica, because obviously you've got tons of experience, not just traveling and living abroad like a lot of people, but you've done some very specific jobs as well, and you've really tailored your career around working and traveling around as well. So yeah, let's just get into it. So question number one is, how can you give us some advice on how to maintain long-term travel? So a lot of people, they say it's not affordable to travel long-term. So how do you think it's possible to travel for, obviously you've done this for 10 years. So what tips do you have?
Well, I think the most important thing that you need to do if you want to do this like a long term, and I'm talking like more than just a couple of years, is to really, really make it like your #1 priority. Because that's the biggest problem for most people who want to do it. They think it's a really nice idea, but then there's so many other things that are so important to them that it kind of goes back a bit down on the priority list. And, there's family, there's your career, there's money, there's relationships and all that. And that makes it sometimes really difficult to maintain kind of like a nomad lifestyle. So that's kind of like the #1 thing, make it a priority, because there's always going to be, other things that are also going to be important. And one thing is also important to obviously have like a source of income. And that can come from, very different places. Like there are digital nomads, but you don't have to be a digital nomad to make this happen. You can have like a regular job and then just apply for, there's regular immigration visas, like skilled migration visas. You can do that. And then maybe you just need to commit longer. You need to stay in a country for maybe 3 years at a time.
Yeah.
But that's a good way to make it happen. Also, like something like you're doing, like being on a working holiday visa, that's also a great option.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. I mean, people are always telling me, oh, it's not, easy to travel, not everyone can afford it. And like you said, you've got to make it your #1 priority. You really have. It's got to be the most important thing to you. And yeah, I mean, since being in New Zealand, I've learned so much more about visas and how it's actually not that difficult to get immigration visas and live abroad and work abroad, especially if you have a skill as well. So yeah, really good tips. Thank you. Okay. And question 2 is, could you give us some tips on traveling solo as a female? Just some tips for keeping yourself safe, because obviously I think that women should be able to travel solo. It's something we should all be able to do, but sometimes we do have to take more precautions, and some women are a bit nervous. So what do you do to make sure that you're a bit more safe when you're traveling on your own?
Well, I think one really important thing is to always have a very healthy level of suspicion. So kind of when you meet, especially men, like I'd always kind of like be a little bit on your guard, don't kind of, be paranoid or anything, but, keep in the back of your mind that you need to look after yourself. One really good tip that I implement myself every time I'm somewhere is like I give myself a curfew. And that really depends on like the country I'm in. Like in some places, I'm back at the hostel at like 6 p.m. because that's when it gets dark, and that's when I know I need to be back. When I'm out on my own in other countries, like if it's a Western country, I might stay out until 10, but I'm not gonna be like out until 3 a.m. in the morning on my own in a city I don't know. So that's I think one good thing you can do. I also always have like a whistle in my backpack. That also has kind of has 2 purposes for me. So one obviously is like to attract attention if I'm like in a really uncomfortable situation that I need to get out of.
Yeah.
But the main reason why I actually have it is because I hike a lot on my own. So I love trekking and I love being in the mountains. But a lot of the time I don't have somebody to go with me. So just in case I fall off a cliff, I can, like I can't scream for help for like 10 hours, but I can probably whistle that long. So there we go. Also, like it really depends on the culture, but in certain countries, avoid all unnecessary conversation with men. That's really important in certain cultures, that you avoid also eye contact and that kind of thing. I had one situation with like a girl. We were staying in this beautiful hostel in India, and the staff were really lovely. So she exchanged kind of like her private Facebook with one of the staff. And then like she left, and then a day later she was getting like love messages and all that from him, because he kind of was misinterpreting the whole thing. So it's just, yeah, important to be careful with that sort of thing.
That's another thing that I think is important for you to talk about, because I think a lot of us haven't traveled to the countries you've been to. A lot of us have just been to very, very safe, like, countries we're used to that's similar to home. I mean, I've not done a lot of travel outside of like Western countries, so I am in some ways quite naive as well to a lot of these things. And it is important to remember when you're traveling through different countries that there's different cultural differences, and yeah, different people take things differently. And yeah, especially from someone like you who's more experienced with traveling in so many different places, I think it is important to be aware that not everyone has good intentions. And yeah, I just think that was really good. And also, I like the whistle idea. I haven't actually got one, but maybe I'll have to get one.
Yeah, I also think maybe one thing also worth mentioning, if you're like in non-Western countries, it's always a good idea to say that you're married, even if you're not.
Right.
That's quite a good idea, because otherwise, like, you're basically saying you're available.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Good to know. Okay. And for question 3, what's your favorite location been so far? Obviously, you've been to so many places. So is there anything that sticks out in your head that was your favorite place that you'd maybe like to go back to, or just that you liked more than anywhere else?
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of a two-fold question, you know, because like there's like the favorite place and the favorite country and all that. In my case, thankfully, that's the same. So my favorite place in the world is a very unknown spot in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high pass that goes through the mountains in Switzerland. It's called the Oberalp Pass. And it's just this beautiful, gorgeous mountain scenery up there. I discovered this place on like a road trip in 2008, I believe. So like a long, long time ago. But the scenery in Switzerland is just so gorgeous. And I was really lucky to live in that country for 3 years. And I discovered, you know, so much. And for me, it's the best place to travel as well as the best place to live. It's my absolute favorite.
It's funny you mentioned that, because you're not the first person that's told me Switzerland is your favorite place or favorite country. And
interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never made it there yet. So when I go back to Europe and I find myself back in that part of the world, I'll definitely be going there. Like, it's one of my first places, because I've been told by so many people it has pretty much something of everything. It's got, you know, like, I've heard that it's just such a beautiful country and there's so much to do and see there, and it's so diverse. So yeah, it's definitely somewhere that I'd love to go as well. So thank you for sharing that.
the pro tip is for like get a job there.
Yes.
Because it is very expensive, but once you work there, like, you'll be making good money. Yeah. And then you can like also like, I mean, I did sightseeing every weekend while I was there basically, and like it is inexhaustible the amount of stuff you can do there. You can spend years in that country and not get bored, and it's so small, it's unbelievable.
Kind of like New Zealand though. You could spend years here, and there's still so much to see. Yeah, it actually sounds quite similar in that respect. It's interesting also you mentioned get a job there, because I think a lot of people know Switzerland is a very expensive country to live in. So do you, I mean, this isn't actually a question I had for you, but I just thought I'd ask, is it possible to get lots of jobs there if you don't speak their language? Like, is there lots of English speaking jobs in Switzerland?
My job was almost exclusively English speaking. Yeah. I was working in the French part of Switzerland. I do speak French. My French is okay to get by, you know, at work, but it's not the greatest. But in my job, we had lots of people who only spoke English. And especially if you go to one of, like, you know, the cities like Geneva or Zurich, there's many English speaking jobs.
Cool. That's good to know. I'm sure a lot of people will find that really interesting to know. So, all right. So next question is, I like this one. So would you change anything if you could go back to the beginning of your travel journey? You've been doing this for a long time, right? And you've done and seen so much, but maybe if you could go back to 10 years ago when you were a lot younger, is there anything you would want to do that now, then that you didn't get around to doing? Maybe now because you're too settled in a career, or maybe you were younger then. Is there anything you just wish you did back then that you maybe didn't do?
Well, there's one thing I think that I could have done differently, I suppose, because I never got to do the working holiday visa. And there was one opportunity where I now think I might have, it might have been a good time. And that was when I first moved to Australia. I moved there to study, and my course would it was going to start in March, but I already arrived in November. Now, because I was on that student visa, I wasn't allowed to work.
Right.
And I did think, I'm just going to save the working holiday visa for a later time and use it then. And that time never came. So looking back, I should have gone there on the working holiday visa and then get the student visa right before my course starts. That would have been the way to go. And unfortunately, I didn't do that.
Yeah, I think a working holiday really does give you a different experience of travel, actually. It's a very good way of just getting casual jobs and meeting lots and lots of more travelers and socializing. I think working holidays give you a different kind of essence of travel. I've experienced digital nomad travel now and working holiday, and I actually find that I love working holidays just because you feel a bit more connected to other travelers, and it really is a lovely way to see the country. So I would recommend to anyone watching, definitely do one if you have the opportunity. And also, it is a shame because there's a time limit, an age limit. Obviously, most of them you can't be older than 30. So I know 30 seems quite old, but it's not long before you get there. So I agree. It's definitely good to just do it while you have the chance, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and number 5 is, do you have any advice for people who really want to live a more travel lifestyle, but they're too afraid to take that leap? I've spoken to so many people who are just a little afraid of quitting their job and going traveling, or they're afraid they'll get there and run out of money, or they just have these fears in their head, like maybe they're just not able to go abroad on their own, or they're too scared. So what kind of advice do you have for people that are just a little afraid to just go for it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to say, like, I used to be that person. Like, when I was really young, like, I was terrified to, go abroad and do that. I really, really wanted to do that, but I was like so scared. So my number one tip is to start small. So the first thing I did is I just went to Canada, another Western country, for 4 weeks. That was my first trip out of high school. And that's kind of like how I took that first little step to get out there. And then like about, when was that? A year and a half later, I did another trip to Southeast Asia, this time for 2 months. So, twice as long. And then the step after that. And that's kind of where it becomes important, like, because I knew I wanted to live abroad, but I didn't know like how and if it was for me, is I got an internship in South Africa, and I stayed there for about 3 months. And then after that, I was really lucky. I was in Europe. There's the Erasmus program, which is kind of like a student exchange between universities. And I was able to participate in there. And I went to Prague in Czech Republic for a semester. And that was really, really helpful, because those two, experiences living in 2 very different countries showed me that, yes, it is the lifestyle that I want. So it's just a matter of, dipping your toe in the water and seeing if it is for you, because you might go somewhere for 3 months and then you discover, oh, actually living abroad is not for me. And that is perfectly fine. But it's important that you try and see how you like it. Another thing a lot of people do is they go to, Chiang Mai in Thailand for, let's say, 3 months and just try being a digital nomad, and you can just, give it a shot and see if it is for you. And if it's not, you've just had a really nice holiday somewhere. Yeah.
I think it's also important for people to remember that just because you start traveling doesn't mean you can't go back to your old life. You're not giving up a career for the rest of your life. If you quit your job to travel, if you decide 3 months later you don't like it, you can go back and sometimes get your old job back. If not, do a new job. Like, it's always easy to go back to your old life again. And you're not just, giving everything away. I think a lot of people have that fear that they're just giving it away. And also, I found a lot of people feel like I jumped into full-time travel, but actually I didn't either. I kind of went slowly as well. I did go into full-time digital nomad lifestyle, but I started off close to home. A lot of people, they questioned why I started traveling in Europe first. They were like, why didn't you go to Southeast Asia or different places that are not like your culture? But for me, I was very nervous to travel. I didn't get my first passport till I was 24. You know, that's quite old for someone traveling now. So for me, just going somewhere like Budapest and you know, going to Paris and going to Berlin, just going to places close to home, just a couple-hour flight away, where I knew if anything went wrong, I could just fly back with Ryanair for like £20, and it really wasn't so scary knowing I was just so close to home, and I was in countries so similar to my lifestyle, if that makes sense. And that was a really good way to just adjust to it as well. And once I'd lived abroad in various countries as a digital nomad, just close to home, knowing I could fly back for Christmas or for a holiday whenever I wanted, it gave me that strength to go all the way to New Zealand on the other side of the world. But I didn't just jump to the other side of the world straight away. I started off close to home. So it's really easy to do that, especially if you're from like the US. You could practice just living in different states and going to different places in around your own country and just starting off local and then spreading out as well if you're a little afraid to just jump out straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good idea. You know, just go to a country that's fairly close where it's cheap to go back if you need to. So yeah, good advice too.
Okay, and for number 6, where do you feel most at home? Because you've been to so many places, as I keep saying. So is there any country that you feel like, you know what, when I go back here, I am actually home? Or do you just feel like you don't really belong anywhere anymore?
Well, I do have to say, like, for me, that's definitely still, you know, a certain place in Germany where I lived, you know, on and off for parts of my childhood. And my family is around that area too. Like, I don't have a specific hometown, but there is an area in kind of the south of Germany, in the state of Bavaria, the kind of like the western part of the state. It's called Swabia, and there's like kind of a small area where I lived throughout my childhood, you know, like I said, on and off a little bit, but that's still kind of the place I consider home. And I do love going back here. It's, you know, it's a magical place and I like being here, but, you know, like I can never stay in a place for very long. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I always get interesting responses from like nomadic people, because some people just, they feel like they don't really have any home at all anymore, and some people feel so at home in a place that they moved to that's so far away from where they grew up. So I think it's always fascinating to hear that. So number 7 is, do you think that you'll ever settle down somewhere in the long run and live somewhere like indefinitely, you know, like buy a house and maybe have a career in one place for a long time? Or do you think you'll always be a bit more nomadic?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen while I'm alive, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Or at least not until, you know, like I'm too old and I can't physically do it anymore, because I kind of already grew up moving, you know, a bit more than most people, I suppose. And it seems normal to me. Like the longest I've ever lived in one place was 10 years. That was kind of when I was a teenager. And that's kind of like the longest I've done. And it seemed way too long back then. It seems like horrendously long right now. And I feel like for me, the idea of settling down, that it's suffocating. Like I know there's people who want to do it, and that's perfectly fine. Like I don't understand why people would want to do that. Like it's just kind of beyond what I can comprehend, I guess. Like it's very normal. It's what everybody, you know, most people eventually do. It's just not for me, I suppose.
It's interesting because I was having the same conversation with a guy in a hostel a few weeks ago, and we were saying how most people, I think a lot of people, they're afraid of change, or they're afraid of the unknown. So they like to have a home and a base and a place that they know they're going to go back to and be at for the next 20 years. Like a lot of people like security. I find that for a lot of nomadic people, security is a bit like, not security, but more just things remaining the same is quite a frightening feeling. Like for me, I think that if I was to look into my future and see myself in the same place for 30 years, I would probably like want to cry. Like I love the idea of not knowing what's going to happen. I love thinking, I don't know where I'm going to be this time next year. I don't know where I'm going to be this time next month. Like it's just exciting to know that things are always moving and always changing. And so I don't know. I mean, I think in the long run, having a base is nice, having a place you can call home. But I know for sure, certain like you, I'll always be on the move, and I'll always be keeping things changed and just different, because I think that for some nomadic people, it is more frightening thinking that it's all going to remain the same, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And do you know what? Like, I think I recently partially discovered, like a part of the reason why I'm actually doing it. I was watching this video by a YouTuber called Michelle B. And she said, like, you know, like when you commute to work every day, for example, you know, you do like the same thing every day. What your brain ends up doing is like it mushes all the memories of that same activity together. So you don't have like 365 separate memories of going to work that year, but it's kind of like one memory. And that's like how your life seems shorter. And there is one amazing remedy against that, and that is just keep moving, because things will change. And honestly, it makes your life so much richer. It really does.
I can totally agree. And if I look back on the last few years since I've been doing so many things, my life has seemed, although time goes quick when you're busy, you look back and you've done so much and you have so many memories and you've seen so much. And now I have so many stories and just so many photographs and memories. And I just imagine that if I keep doing this for the next 30, 40 years, by the time I'm much older, I'm going to have such an enriched life. Yeah, just full of so many memories and so many things I've done and seen. And yeah, I just think it's quite scary to think that I would just be doing one thing my whole life. Yeah,
I think the great thing is, like, if you do it like this, you get to live 20 lives in one, and that's the amazing thing about it.
Especially, I mean, a lot of people, they haven't seen half of what some nomads have seen in, their whole life. And some of us are in our 20s and we've seen so much. And I think it is just really amazing to be able to say we've done that.
Yeah, okay. For sure.
So the next question is, what is your favorite travel memory? So is there a specific person you met or an event you did or something that just gives you a really good memory of your travels? Is there any situation you were in that just really stands out the most?
I have to say, honestly, there's probably too many to count. There's lots of them. Like, one that's maybe the first one is when I was 18 and I got my driver's license. And I did my first, road trip. Like, I just took mum's car, and I think my parents, they were on holiday or something, so they were away, but I had my mum's car, and I just took the car and I just drove over the border to Austria, and I just felt so free. I just thought, I can do anything. And that's something, that I'll always remember. And then there's also lots of other things, like seeing Angkor Wat for the first time, or going on a day trip to the Cape of Good Hope while I was living in Cape Town, or making, certain friends, people who are going to be friends for life, all these kind of things. It's really difficult to pick just one. There's just so many.
Cool. Okay. And number 9 is, what are your biggest travel goals still to come? So where do you want to go next? What do you want to achieve or do in the next few years?
Oh, in the next few years. I'm thinking more long term.
Yeah, so, even longer, next 10 years.
I mean, one thing I want to do, what I did about 2 years ago was, I took a whole year just to travel, and I spent that year in the Asia Pacific, and that was a really good trip. I had a lot of fun, and I kind of want to do that again, because most of the time when I live abroad, I still work, I still, do things, I still need an income. But sometimes I do take longer periods of time off and just travel, and I want to do that again. And I want to do the Americas next time. And the goal is to do that sometime before I'm 40. I'm now 31, so I've got a lot of time. But I mean, my last trip, I also started planning that, I don't know, 8 years ahead of time. So that's definitely one of the big travel goals. And then kind of if you go ultra long term, what I want to end up doing, eventually when I'm old and gray, is I want to be a gray nomad in a camper van.
Perfect.
That's my life goal.
Sounds great. Yeah. Okay. I know what you mean, actually, when you talk about the difference between working abroad and wanting to take a year out and really travel and long term, because that's something I haven't actually done yet. I've always worked abroad the whole time I've traveled. I've always been working, and there have been odd times when I've taken a couple of weeks off work to just backpack around or travel around or road trip. And they were some of my best memories, just because I had no work and I was free to go where I wanted. And I had a little bit of savings because I'd been working so long. So I was able to just enjoy myself and not think about having to work for that 1 week or whatever. So yeah, that is something I absolutely want to do too. Just save a good amount of money and travel maybe South America for a whole year and just not worry about having to work. I think that would be really cool as well, just to take some time to just travel, because that's something I haven't done yet. And it's nice to have the contrast, working in a country versus just traveling around for a bit. I think that's really nice to experience as well.
To make that happen, I got like, basically there's two good ways to make that happen. One is to really work in a country that has like a very high income compared to expenses. So like for that, for example, Switzerland is perfect. That's really good for that. Or to have a job where your expenses are all paid for.
Yeah.
That, because then you can save your entire salary. So these two, I think, kind of the two best.
Yeah, and that's something I kind of hacked a little bit here in New Zealand. I managed to find myself a job that paid very good, and also a lot of my expenses have been paid while I've been here. So I've been able to save a good substantial amount of money to pay for, like, I'm doing a bit of traveling before Australia for about 2 months, and I'm going to be doing a bit of Asia and New Zealand road trips and stuff. And yeah, I made that happen by getting a job that did pay above minimum wage and did pay my expenses like meals and accommodation. So if you can, I totally agree, if you can find one of those jobs, it's a really good way of saving and making that happen. And I didn't know those jobs were possible until I found them. So they definitely are. You just have to look for them, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Very good tip, though. Very good tip, because I wouldn't have known that until I'd experienced it myself. So yeah, that's really good to try and get if you can get one of those. Okay, so number 10 is do you have any tips for keeping healthy physically and mentally when traveling? Because I know it's exhausting. Like, I gained a bit of weight here in New Zealand, and, you know, sometimes it's just mentally exhausting, always being on the move or whatever. So yeah, do you have any tips just for keeping yourself kind of together? Because I find it hard because there's no routine. Because I work in lots of different cities and towns, it's hard to have like a gym membership, and it's hard to like cook your own meals when you're living in like accommodation that's not yours or whatever, without a kitchen. So yeah, what tips do you have in general?
Well, I guess it really depends on the situation you're in. You know, like if you're a backpacker and on the go every single day, then, you know, like you're automatically walking a lot, and, you know, you're on the move a lot. And then I think other things, you know, come in, like, for example, like what I do when I just backpack is, like, I always have, for example, a toothbrush and a toothpaste kind of like in my day pack. So because, like, otherwise, like if you travel for a year and you don't brush your teeth regularly, like, they're going to start rotting. But you're not always going to be able to go back to your hostel to do that. So that's one thing. Or like, but if you're like more like in a place where you're kind of more stable, or you like in your situation and you can't really have like a gym membership, one thing I did while I was living in Congo is I had these exercise videos by Jillian Michaels, and I would just, you know, get a yoga mat and then just follow them. And that's a really good way to kind of stay healthy and kind of exercise, especially if you're in a situation where you can't move a lot. Yeah. So I think that's really good. Also, I've got a couple more tips for, like, I guess, backpacker to, you know, stay healthy. One is, like, I know it's tempting to use overnight, you know, transport to save on accommodation, but I wouldn't advise doing that more than maybe once a week, because it's really exhausting for the body, because most likely you won't get a good night's sleep. And it can make you really, really ill. And trust me, I've been there. So I know. And then, yeah, one general tip, I guess, for traveling wherever, just if you're having some food and it tastes funny, just don't eat it. If it's like I'm not talking about like exotic, I'm just talking about the off. Yeah. Don't eat that. So that's one thing for physically, you know, is staying healthy. For your mental health, I think one thing that's important, especially in the long term, is staying in touch with family and friends back home. Yeah. And that's really important for, you know, also, like, if you're going to return home eventually, for those relationships, that they can continue. And another thing, if you're traveling really quickly, is I would say about every 3 months, I'd take 2 weeks off from travel to stay in one place. And you don't necessarily need to plan this. Sometimes you just end up in a place and you just stay there for 2 weeks, you know, like, you know, maybe if you're a beach person, you stay at a nice beach. So I think that's really important to also kind of take breaks from travel.
Yeah, and I can totally agree with you in terms of overnight buses and getting no sleep. I did that a lot when I was traveling Europe. Lots of overnight buses. I was trying to save money, and overnight buses are the cheapest. You know, I take the early morning 6 a.m. flight because it was the cheapest. and I would just try and save money, anything to save a night's accommodation by getting some sort of transport. And it's fine for a short amount of time, but I wouldn't put myself through that anymore, because yeah, it's just so exhausting, and it really does just exhaust you for the whole next day. And you know, you end up missing out on a day of travel anyway, because you end up being just so tired you can't see anything, and yeah, you just end up feeling terrible for it. So yeah, I completely agree. Don't Yeah, definitely try and get good night's sleeps every night and stay in a good bed.
Yeah, for sure. And one tip I have, if you're like on a really long trip, is, unless it's like your very first trip, but I don't think you'd take a whole year off as your very first trip, is to start with the most difficult countries and then end with the easy ones. Start with like Egypt or India, then go to like Southeast Asia and finish in Australia, New Zealand, because by the time you are like 6 months, 9 months in, you're mentally exhausted, and then you don't want to deal with all the hassle anymore. But then if you end up in like really nice and easy countries, that's not going to be a problem. So that's another tip I can give if you're like on a really long trip.
No, I totally agree. And also it's nice to end your trip just chilling out, like at the beach, or just relaxing and yeah, kind of celebrating what you've just done. No, I totally agree. That's a really good tip. So the last question, and we're getting to half an hour now, so we seem to have done good timing. And I really like this question. What is your like advice or just opinion on having a career and traveling? So do you think that when you travel full time, you need to sacrifice having a career? Because a lot of people think you do. Or can you make your, can you still maintain a good career and progress and make yourself a very good, income and, stable career, and even have things like a pension and, retirement plan and everything while you're traveling full time, like you are for like a long time? Do you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible. And like I said, it is exactly what I do. The key to doing that though is like finding a type of job where you can travel and it's not gonna, affect your career. So I'm a humanitarian aid worker. I mean, I need to travel in most cases to do my job. But even if you're not in that specific sector, let's say you are like, you have a business degree and you want to work in business and marketing, what you can do is like, you can still move to different countries. You might just need to do it at a slower pace. So for example, if you're, a very lucky person, you're from the European Union, you can do it within different European countries. There's English speaking jobs everywhere. You can also then see if you can get a skilled migration visa to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, maybe. Or you can find a company, that's willing to send you to other countries, because like if it's a big international firm, they might be willing to expatriate you. So there's lots of different options. You just need to look at your specific profession and see like what opportunities are there. For most professions, I think there is ways to do it. It might take a long time, for example, to get visas, and it might be a pain to organize it. But if that is what you want from life, then I'm sure, you can find a way to make it happen.
And I think it's also important to remember that if this is the life you want, it's good just to take a bit more control and control what you're doing more, in the respect that kind of be your own boss, even if you're working for another company. Take control of things like your savings account. Make sure you are putting money in your savings regularly, so you have got like a good savings for when you're older, if you want to put down a deposit on a house, or if you want to have some sort of retirement fund. Look into how you can do that yourself externally. So you're working jobs in other countries, maybe your job doesn't have a plan for you, but you can create your own plan so that you're covered. And also things like I used to work in the theatre industry and the film industry, so I worked with a lot of actors, costume designers, producers, directors, people like that. And even though the job doesn't necessarily, sometimes it lets you travel because you're on tour a lot, but really you're not traveling, you're just working like 18 hours a day. But the good thing about these careers is they're all freelance. Like you tend to be self-employed. Maybe you'll work for one theatre production for 6 months, and then you'll get a very good salary with that 6 months. And then maybe you can go traveling for 3 months after doing that job. And then you can take on another freelance contract and work for another production company for 6 months, and then take a few months out and travel between contracts and between shows. And then you can still have your career. You can still be working in one profession and gaining contacts and gaining experience and working up the ladders in that industry. But also, because it is a more flexible career, like you're working freelance, you're self-employed, you choose when you take your contracts. So if you want to take 6 months off to travel, you just don't take a contract for that 6 months, or you could even take a contract in another country. So yeah, just think about if your career lets you be self-employed and lets you work freelance with other people as well. So then you can organize your time a bit better and be more flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, making it happen and finding ways to make it happen in whatever job you're specifically in.
Exactly. Okay, so that's all the questions, and yeah, I think this went really well, and we managed to keep it to 35 minutes, which is awesome. So yeah, I loved asking you the questions. Did you enjoy this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your channel. And we're going to go over to my channel in about 25 minutes at 8 a.m. European time. So I guess that's where we're going to continue this conversation.
Yeah, so if anyone is watching this and they want to see Danica interview me on her channel, definitely head over in 25 minutes. The link is in the description box to Danica's channel and also to your Instagram and Twitter. And the link for the video is there too. So you guys can go watch and see that. And also, if anyone has any questions quickly, I don't know if they do. We've got like 5 viewers or something. But if anyone wants to ask anything, you can ask in the comment box now. But I think in a minute we're going to end this live stream and start preparing for the one on Danica's channel. And also this video is going to go live on, it will be uploaded to YouTube too, so people can watch over it from the beginning if they didn't see it all the way through. So should we end it now, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any questions coming in.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so yeah, so it was great talking to you, Danica. Thank you so much for being on my channel, and hopefully we'll see some people on yours channel in 25 minutes.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
See you. Bye.
See you.